Hi, Samantha Brown. How are you?
Very good. How are you doing?
There's always a stress with the technical part of Zoom interview, but let's just jump in. Talk to me about technical AV stuff where you're shooting everything. I
Oh
mean,
boy. Well, thank goodness they're all professionals. I
yeah.
travel with a team of eight, including me, two
Okay.
camera, one sound audio engineer, a director, a producer, and then there's all the digital. We have to download everything at
Yeah.
night, all the digital files to make sure we have the show. So that
Yep.
there's that fun little nugget. And so yeah, there's a if it's humid, the cameras act differently. If it's loud, we can't do a show because of sound quality.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's always technical difficulties, and you just write them out because when we travel, the good news is it's real life, right? So we
Yeah.
just kind of go with the flow a little bit.
Are you speaking of sirens outside?
Speaking of,
Yep.
exactly.
I'm in Brooklyn. There's going to be some sirens. Are you actually after the shoot downloading the files? I mean, are you a producer in that standpoint, like a technical, or are you like when I work at the Daily Show? Thank God I don't have to touch any memory card.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
no,
are you
I don't. We
okay?
have a specific person who has all
Okay.
the memory cards. That's
Yeah.
their job at the end of the
Yeah.
night.
Yeah.
Pre beer drinking, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I'm more of the creative producer,
Got
thankfully.
it.
Yes.
When man, you've just spanned the globe, and just the show that you do now on PBS, which is it called Places You Love, Places to Love,
Places to love. Yeah.
right? But this is season 6.
It is. Yes, and season 7 drops the first week of January. So we're just like 3 weeks out for a brand new
Wow.
season.
And then that's just this round of travel shows. Then there's all the stuff that we've seen on Travel Channel. I mean, are there still places left for you to go?
Oh my gosh, the world just keeps getting bigger, Michael. It doesn't get any smaller. And
Yeah.
so yeah, there's always places. There's entire well, not entire, yeah, entire continents I haven't been to. So
Yeah.
plenty of great travel content left in my life.
On a more general level, why is travel important to you?
Oh boy. I feel like travel is important because one, it marks a fresh start. And there are so few things in our lives these days that do that. And it doesn't matter if you are traveling 10,000 miles, right? Or 2 hours from home. For all of us, we feel like we have this new beginning. And that's important for us
Mm-hmm.
as human beings. I think also these days we hear a lot about sustainability, and that's usually in reference to rivers and mountains and our animals. But I feel like humanity needs a little sustainability love as well. And when you travel, we are really meeting people face to face, and we're having conversations with people, as opposed to just interacting with them on social media. I feel like social media has sort of eroded the way we treat one another, don't you think? And
Yeah.
travel is where we show up as human beings. And so there's many levels that I feel like travel is not only a luxury, it's a way of relaxing, but it's also a necessity in our lives.
It kind of forces you to become a member of that community, whatever that community is. I mean, maybe it's the resort you're staying at, maybe it's the city, maybe it's the bus you're on. Um, are you, if I sit next to you on a bus, are you chatting it up with me? Are you a little bit of both? I mean, it seems from what I've seen of your shows, you dive right in, but that's on camera too.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely, I think, because I live in Brooklyn as well. I live in New York
Okay.
City, so I know you just don't chat up people. But I always give a smile. I
Yeah.
always, and do you feel this way as well when you walk into a subway car? You kind of suss it out for the people who are going to be by your side should anything go wrong. And
Right.
you kind of
Right.
want to present yourself as that person that, like, I'm present, I'm here. And so I'm not necessarily, I love those moments in the subway and the bus where you can just have these quick conversations because there's no commitment to it. At some point, you're going
Right.
to get off your stop. On a plane, no, I don't talk to anybody
No.
because I just do
Yeah.
not want to be trapped. And so it depends on the situation. But yeah, I feel like I always try to present myself as a person who is open to others. I'm a smiler. Even
Yeah.
in the New York City, I make
Yeah.
eye contact with other people and smile. So
I don't know
I'm one of
why.
those people.
Right. Well, I love that. I mean, that's how I was raised, but I don't know why it kind of surprised me when I learned you lived in New York. Maybe it's because you have a friendly demeanor. I was like, this isn't matching up. But is there a travel pillow that you like?
Oh my gosh,
I feel
no.
like none of
No.
them
And I've
work.
tried every single one of them. They're all sent to me. Some
Yeah.
of them are like mini mattresses where you're like, you really think I'm going to carry this on a plane?
Yeah.
Others have you sleeping and setting up entire contraptions to the point
Yeah.
where you're making a fool of yourself, right?
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
just a big fan of a big scarf or like your
Mm.
your own, jacket that you bunch up.
Hmm.
And here's something I just learned, Michael, after
Okay.
being in travel forever, is that you can lift the armrest in between you and lift it up. And then if you put your jacket on there, you've got a place to lie. Because sometimes those airplane seats, some of them don't have that little wing system where you can kind
Yeah.
of rest your head. And so if you have that, you can rest. Now, if you don't know the person next to you, I wouldn't recommend that. But if you are traveling with your family, you can use that armrest to prop a jacket or like a scarf, and now you've got a place to lay your head.
You're offering travel advice right now that is very helpful. Your Instagram offers travel advice that's very helpful, but it's not like you got into this to offer travel advice. It's just that you've done so much travel now that I guess you're a travel expert, right?
I guess I am. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do now accept that title. Before I didn't. I had a hard time accepting that because it's just a new set of rules almost every time you go
Right.
somewhere or do something. And I also feel like this idea that we have to be right when we travel, there is
Hmm.
a way to travel and a way not to travel, is really limiting. You know, it's
Yeah.
a journey. There are mistakes made by all of us. There isn't, I always hated those top 5 ways to get to the airport. And if you do these top 5 rules, you'll have a smooth, you smooth sailing experience. That's not true. You can do all 5 and it could be the worst day of your life. It's just
Right.
with travel, you just, again, it's that sort of go with the flow. Here's what I'm armed with. Here are my tools. But patience is probably the biggest one to have in terms of a skill set.
I saw something where you mentioned one of the ways to avoid that travel rage. And that's a phrase that doesn't get thrown out enough.
Yes.
Because we have road rage and we have rage in our everyday lives, but really, I mean, we've all been at the Atlanta airport and seen the door get closed on somebody who's ready to board, and it's a rage. But
Mm-hmm.
one of the tips
Yeah.
I loved, which seems simple, but it's amazing how many people don't just have some peanut butter or a granola bar in their bag at all times.
It's a very good point. That is such a great point. A lot of the times, I would say most of the times, I have lost it, and I have.
You have?
It's just because I was hungry,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
did not have any more capabilities to hold it together. And so I know
Yeah.
you're a parent as well. We hear all these things when you travel. Make sure you have snacks for the kids. Make sure you have this for the kids. And we forget to eat ourselves.
Yeah.
And so that, like you said, that granola bar, 200 calories separated me from, being the adult that I could be and just being
Right.
a total toddler myself. So
Yeah.
one of the easiest ways to control rage is to make sure you come to the airport either fed or you've got your own food.
Yeah.
Because even waiting in line for food at the airport can be an enraging experience.
It the airport alone is just it's such a there's so many decisions that are being made without our input or control, and it's hard for humans to kind of just accept that. But it's also amazing that you get in this device and then 4 hours later you're in a different culture, language, royalty, money, food. I mean, it still blows my mind. Even when I land in Washington, D.C., not even far from here, it blows my mind that that just happened. Do you still have that kind of, oh my God, what?
Always.
Yeah.
I actually love airports.
Okay.
I love it. I have to get through security first. That whole anxiety of getting to the airport through an airport. We deal with the 3 top most stressful airports in the world
Oh,
on
is
a
that right?
near constant basis. It doesn't get any harder than Newark, JFK, and
Right.
LaGuardia. But
Right.
once you're through security, I love airports. And it's like, for me, it's my 1980s mall. I love to wander. I
Right.
enjoy it. I think the airport experience is becoming better in terms
Mm,
of food offered, the
mm,
local experience, they're trying to bring it in. But yeah, the airplane experience, not so much. But I think you hit the nail on the head when you said you still can't believe you can do this. And it's
mm.
true, it's still this privilege. And when people start to really complain about it, I always tell them you could always take the bus.
Right. Or sometimes when I'm on my city bike, it happened last night. I'm on the city bike. I forgot gloves. I'm basically giving myself frostbite, traveling between comedy shows. And I literally said to myself, this is the life you've chosen. So don't forget, like if you before you start complaining to yourself, you made these decisions. And I think about sometimes with people with traveling, it's like you booked the flight. You wanted to do this. Um, you mentioned living in New York City. I'm always curious. Are you happy to get out of New York City and go somewhere new, or is it difficult when you land because nothing compares to this place?
I love New York City. I
Yeah.
love living here, but I love leaving it. And I think New York City prepares you for anything, and
Yeah.
you have an appreciation for other great cities, because
Mm-hmm.
really cities are, I guess if you really broke it down, why do we even exist, right? There's so many different people, and we all have different, energies, and we clash sometimes, but we do. It works. It
Yeah.
actually works.
Yeah.
So I think the frustration I feel in other places is just that a famous editor of the New York Post said it best. He retired, and this is like the early 90s. And he basically specifically said, New York City, there's New York City, and everywhere else is just polite dysfunctionalism. And I love
Right.
that
Right.
because it's true. Like, sure, we're a little terse, we're a little more like focused on who we are as people, but you can get a bagel any time of the
Mm-hmm.
day. You want a
Mm-hmm.
pair of shoes, you can get a pair of shoes. Sure, you're not gonna be like, hey, how can I help you? But you're still gonna get what you want. You
Yeah.
go anywhere else and you'll just be said, oh, I'm sorry, we don't do that. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
It's just those kinds of things that's what begins to frustrate me, because I'm just so used to not having everything whenever I want, but it's just a city that operates 24/7. So understanding that, oh no, we don't serve sandwiches after 2, even though I see sandwiches in their
Right.
refrigerator,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I'm like, oh, okay. Those are the kind of things that I think I get a little bit frustrated with.
Yeah.
But then totally understand, because that's my job to
Yeah.
actually just more assimilate into the community that I'm in. So, but yeah, I love New York, and I know people knock it, and whenever people knock it and say, "Oh, New York City, it's this," and say maybe they're from Oklahoma, I just say, a New York City doesn't spend a second thinking about you. So don't think
God,
about New
it's
York
so
City.
true.
Just
New
so
York
many
City.
people are fixated on New York City. So it's like, we don't think anything about you. So you're probably just wasting your time thinking about us.
Yeah. That's a good point. It's so incredibly humbling at times. And then I often think, well, maybe I needed to be humbled.
Yeah.
Maybe it was important that this happened. But let's circle back to when all of this began, okay? Because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but your launch into TV was Travel Channel, correct?
Yes, in
Okay.
1999. Yeah.
Okay. Amazing. Wow. And what was that? Were you in New York then? Were you in LA? Was it a general audition? Was it you pitched them an idea? I just feel like you're kind of a staple in all of our brains of a travel host, of a traveler. But as I was kind of, I was very excited to chat with you, and I'm like, well, this had to start somewhere. When did all this start and happen?
So I moved to New York City in 1990. Oh gosh,
Oh,
two.
okay.
Went to Syracuse University for musical theater.
Okay.
Wanted to come to the city to be. I was a triple threat. I could sing, act, and dance. And then when I moved to New York City, I realized I'm not threatening at all.
Right.
Everyone's really, really good here. So I got into sketch comedy. I
Okay.
loved comedy and became a part of a sketch comedy group and did a lot of improv. I
Okay.
love comedy. That's why I know you so well.
I was going
I
to ask
appreciate
you. I was going
comedians.
to ask you about comedy because I watched like an opening of Girl Meets Hawaii, and you're something 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 circus penis, and I'm like, this person's this person's in comedy somehow. Okay, great. Continue, please.
So loved comedies, loved improv, and just, basically, what do they call it? Beat the pavements. I forget. You're auditioning all the
Hmm.
time as an actor. And I would always submit my headshots to casting directors. And one day the casting director called me in for commercials. I got the commercials on my
Mm.
own. And then the writer of the commercials was a great friend of this production company that was hired by the Travel Channel to create this new show called Great Vacation Homes. And
Right,
that's real vintage
right,
Travel
right.
Channel.
YouTube's got it.
Got the
YouTube's
job,
got
and
it.
I got the job because I could improv, and because the
Okay.
entire audition was improvisational. I think people don't realize when you're a host on TV, there is no script, but
Yeah.
it is still up to you to be concise, be informative, be entertaining, and also be able to cap the scene, to end it somehow. That is your job. And so I was somewhat good at that, and I got the job, and here I am now, close to 25 years later. So it all began with comedy,
Yeah.
improv, and I'm really proud of that.
You should be proud of that. It's interesting you say that because as you're talking about sketch and improv, those little interviews or getting breakfast in Shanghai with a guide, it's a scene. It's a scene. There's a
Exactly.
beginning,
Exactly.
there's an introduction, there's a middle, there's an end, and we think of a host often as on a studio reading a teleprompter, but really what you're doing is you're being our travel guide. You're being our guide, and I think it definitely goes underappreciated, the people that can be in a scene without a script and keep it moving and keep it entertaining. Are you thinking that when you're having breakfast, okay, what's next on the thing? Or are you just in the moment eating the dumplings, doing it?
I do a lot of research ahead of time, and I have definitely what I want to know. I don't come in totally fresh.
Yeah.
And I make sure that, off camera as we're setting up shots, I'm getting to know that person so that one, they feel really more at ease with me on camera. It's really intimidating, as you know, and I'm pretty sure when there's big cameras focused on you, and now you're getting mic'd, and now there's a light being
Yeah.
put on you, because we do put that infrastructure on a scene just so it looks as good as it possibly can. We're not just like running and gunning with camera,
Yeah.
tiny cameras. We really tried to give more of a documentary style
Yep.
look to our show. So I do all of that, and then when the scene starts, it really just becomes connecting one-on-one with a
Yeah.
human being and really allowing the time. I think that's another thing from my pre-Travel Channel days to, I'm sorry, Travel Channel days to now. We allow, as a production team, a lot of time for these scenes, for that person to
Mm.
feel at ease with us. And so we get a deeper part of the
Yeah.
conversation, and it's not just so surface,
Yeah.
like, what's a dumpling? What did you put in those dumplings? How often do you eat dumplings? It becomes more where we learn a little bit more about the people and
Yeah.
the culture around food. And that only happens when you give people time.
Yeah.
So um, once the scene starts, yeah, it is more just like, hey,
Yeah.
let's see what happens. But there's a lot of work to get, to let that just kind of flow. I never wing it, I guess I
Right.
should say. I
Right.
never wing anything.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't necessarily think that, but I also know there's so much that goes into these. I at the Daily Show, I personally don't love chatting while cameras aren't on. Now,
Yeah, because you feel like
now,
you're going to miss something, right?
yeah, and I feel like we miss a new energy of being together. But also, I'm not sitting down having a meal with them, so it's much different. We're trying to tackle sometimes a serious topic. So, but it's very interesting to hear different approaches to it. I have to ask you this: favorite destination, and also a least favorite. I know you have to be diplomatic, and there's a lot of more seasons coming up. But
Yeah, of course.
what comes to mind?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite destinations was Cambodia. I loved it.
Wow.
The Cambodians themselves, I call them the Irish of Southeast Asia, incredibly friendly, talkative,
Right.
and there's a real reciprocity in wondering, well, what's your world like? What's my
Wow.
world like, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. Then combined with an incredible culture, and then Angkor Wat, which is one of the greatest architectural
Mm.
monuments of our time, and then least favorite. Gosh,
I mean,
I'm
it's a
gonna go with least
or
favorite.
one that kind of didn't deliver what you were expecting. As we all know in life, expectations can be a real conundrum.
Yeah, I do not do well in overtly touristy destinations.
Sure.
So for instance, we went to Belize. This was a while ago. This is
Okay.
probably 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And Belize City was a little rough. And I was told it was going to be a little rough, but
Yeah.
I'm still a host and I need to walk around.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the safest interaction.
Yeah.
And so that really can change your opinion about a place. And then we went to where all the tourists are, and I felt, well, I don't want this either,
Right.
because it
Right.
was just I'm not a big I don't care about lying on a beach. I don't care about
Yeah.
just sort of like forgetting life. And so you'll
Yeah.
go to these places, so Belize and some of those islands where tourists go. It is about that, and it's not really interesting to show
You
that, right?
dive.
I mean, it's just
You
not an interesting show.
yeah,
So
you dive
nothing
in.
against them. It's just I wasn't there to show people on vacation.
Yeah. Um you brought up a really great point, and my brother and sister-in-law own this travel tour company. Travel's
Oh,
been in our
really?
travel's been in our family forever. My dad started a travel agency in Michigan. That might be also why you were always on in our house. But I am not someone, and nor was my family, anybody that the safety ever deterred us from traveling. But one of the number one questions my brother gets and my sister-in-law get, my dad used to get, was, is it safe? Is it safe? Is it safe? That's like the number one thing. We're going to Ireland. Is it safe? We're going to Vietnam. Is it safe? It's a barrier we build for ourselves, or maybe it really isn't safe. How do you approach that? You've been everywhere.
Yeah, I feel like and that is such a tricky question, because as soon as you bring up, like, especially women's safety, then people are like,
Yeah.
oh, it's not safe. And
Mm-hmm.
I have just found that these places that aren't seen as safe, I have had very different experiences in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the best thing about social media and is that you can get an of the moment feel of a place. You can get real reaction of what it was like coming back, whether you're following people, and that's a real jewel, because before it was maybe forums where the last time someone went to, I don't know, say Ecuador was a year ago, and that's the information you're getting. And I'm
Right.
always aware of
Right.
that. The information I'm giving to people is sometimes 6 months, if not, like when I talk about beliefs, that's 15 years old. So,
Sure.
but these are my experiences. So when you can get the freshest information, and you can get on information boards or safety
Mm-hmm.
boards or that sort of thing, and boards meaning like forums where people are
Yep.
talking about someone's safety.
Yep.
That's really important. But I would say that I, other than one or two incidences in my 25 years, have only been um, just putting myself out there. People are friendly and they're lovely,
Yeah.
and I always tell people, trust the hairs on the back of your neck.
Mm-hmm.
Those hairs
Mm-hmm.
know more about your safety than anything else. You will feel that something is wrong.
Yeah.
Trust it and get out of that situation. And whenever I've done that, it's been fine.
Yeah.
I also remind people who are worried about safety in other countries that other countries see the United States as one of the unsafest countries in the world
Great
because of
point.
our gun problem, right? And not to get totally serious, but it's really easy to cast stones. And maybe if you understand that the same perception of our country and where we live and where we are is also a concern for people traveling to the United States. So when we think, oh my gosh, why wouldn't you want to go to Michigan? Why wouldn't you want to go to New York? Why wouldn't you want to go? Um, that's sort of what's happening today. So it's something that we're really easy to kind of project onto other countries because we've seen one news story and it's usually overblown. But if you trust, the hairs on the back of your neck,
Yeah.
you're going to be fine. Like all of Europe is fine. There are just places that I think the not knowing the culture can be intimidating, but get to know the culture. Maybe pick up a book and then
Yeah.
you'll understand the cues a little more. But I love traveling alone as a woman, and I
Yeah.
will walk and I will just feel. I did it in Rio de Janeiro, I did it in Mexico City, Honduras, I did in all these places that people were like, And I just it was aware of my surroundings,
Yeah.
and I had phenomenal interactions with the locals. So yeah, it's just being aware, not putting these in as you're
Yep.
walking around, being aware of your situation and understanding what the cultural norms are, and you'll be in a good place.
You did something so natural there, so innate. It's because you're a world traveler, where you saw the situation that I was telling you about those people over there, and but then you also did this. This is what I love about travelers. You said, "How are they seeing us?" And that is, man, does that just solve so many problems.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
beauty of travel is you go to that place and then you do see how they are looking at you, and it just makes everybody more grounded and connected. I would also say this. Yeah, you agree with me? You agree with this amazing statement that you started?
Yeah.
I would say, everybody listening, stop with the safety. Trust your instincts, but go. Go. You're creating a barrier of expanding your life and your horizon, and it's so rare that something terrible happens.
Yeah,
That's
and
my
I
thoughts.
even would say travel alone.
Yes.
Because when you're alone and you're solo, you don't have your partner in crime with you, and you are naturally more open to other people as well.
I
And
love that.
so you know, and people respond to you differently in a
Yeah.
great way, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
for people and women generally, because that's who's asking me, I always
Yep.
tell them, like, I strike up conversations with everyone I can.
Yeah.
Even when there's a language barrier, because then I know I'm in control. If someone strikes up a conversation with me, I just keep that in the back of the mind. They approached
Right.
me. They
Right.
came up to me. Let's
Right.
just keep that in the back of the mind. So if the questions get strange, or then
Yep.
I just know to cut loose. But again, it's just that kind of awareness.
Yeah. I love that. Um, I have two little girls, a 3.5-year-old and a baby.
Oh.
Where should we go? Because I'm terrified of traveling anywhere with that many people.
Well, I mean, you live in New York State, which is a
Yeah.
great state. Keep it easy. You're parents of young children.
Yeah.
And I would get so annoyed at
Hold
the
on.
people
Why
like,
is
oh,
my
to
hand?
Paris and
Why
that, put
is
them on
my
a
hand?
backpack. Like, who
Hold
does
on.
that? Like, it's just like you know, the jet lag alone will kill you. Make it easy where you and is your wife Rachel? Is that her name?
That's right. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, that you get to relax and have a good time. Your
Yeah.
kids just want to have a nice time with their parents. And I find that, you know, you used when our kids were young, we would just pick places that were next to, like, lived in neighborhoods where we could go to a local playground and meet other parents who
Mhm.
live there, and then find out about a restaurant that we should go to with kids. But I would say make it easy. So somewhere
Yep.
drivable.
Yep.
Maybe not get on a plane. You don't need to be on a plane, right, to
Yep.
really experience travel. Did you want to go somewhere warm? Did you
I
want to
don't.
go,
You know.
so
I
is
don't
that what
know.
you're
I
talking about?
just.
Like, here's February and where can we go? That kind of
Yeah.
thing?
I just feel like I've entered little kid mode, and it's shut off a lot of travel. And I'm also kind of okay if the next couple of years we travel less. But I wondered if because you do have, I think you have two sons, and if there was a spot that kind of registered, or I don't, I'm really, we're trying hard to kind of avoid some of that commercialism that is Disney and all that. We're gonna lose that war. We're gonna lose that war, but we're trying.
Yeah. I mean, at 3 years old, your daughter isn't going to remember anything,
Right.
right? So why spend $100 a ticket for that?
Yeah.
And those big, Mickey Mouses can be really intimidating
Yeah.
for a small child. So I wouldn't do the theme parks until at least at, 5. That's when they're really going to appreciate it, right? Obviously, there's an age difference between your kids, but yeah, I would make it simple. I think travel is still really important
Okay.
for young kids. It's because they just, and here's the thing, and this is something that was told to me by a child psychologist. And it was before I had kids. And now that I have kids, it's like, oh my gosh. Um, Child psychologists know that memories of travel for children are actually stronger than any other of their more important dates in their lives, say, like their own graduations or their own birthdays. And one of the reasons why this is so is that when you travel with your kids, it allows your kid to see you be a kid. And
Mm.
what that does for a child's sense of love and
Mm.
security is immeasurable. It's literally the building
Mm.
blocks of a family. And so travel, allows you to
Mm.
be a kid. Something tells me, Michael, that you get to be a kid a lot more than most adults because you're so funny and you
Right.
see things with lightness and humor. But it's so important that our kids not always see us in parent mode.
Yeah.
And when they begin to love and trust us is when they see, oh, we're just like them. And that's very hard to do when you
Yeah.
are in your own home and you have your responsibilities. But when you're outside of home, that's when adults should lighten up and you can pass that on to your kids. And so this is something that's so important for me to get across. Travel, the importance of travel is never measured in miles, how far you go. You can
Mm-hmm.
have life-changing experiences 2 hours from your own home.
Right.
So get away because of how you and Rachel are going to feel being
Yeah. Yeah.
away from your home. You're going to be a
Yeah.
little more light and then include your kids in this great feeling of let's have some fun. And that's the great thing about young kids is you don't have to spend much time. They just need a good playground,
Yeah.
like, a nice
Yeah.
nap. Like
Yeah.
take advantage of that and don't overdo it by any means and spend a ton of money doing so. That'll come
Right.
later. My
Yeah.
kids are now, I have a boy and girl twins
Okay.
and now it's like now we're going to London. Now we're doing the Harry Potter
Right.
experiences that we got to book 6 months in
Right.
advance and pay
Right.
$200 for, and then we got to get new ones. And so the money and the commercialism will come soon enough. Enjoy this time.
I feel that really resonates with me. My dad, he would constantly bring the kids on the tours that he did, but one in particular was we went to Wimbledon one summer, the tennis, and I have this distinct memory of watching him in awe of Wimbledon. And that's exactly what you just said. I loved Wimbledon. I was 11 or 12, but seeing that it made my dad feel something was like, oh wow, this is a powerful spot. Yeah, that's really cool. That really resonates. You started in comedy, hosting. Do you still go to comedy? Is there have you ever been to comedy in your travels that you like? Is there an experience that comes to mind?
Oh gosh, that's such a great question.
Americans crush comedy. I always find other countries it's kind of hard to find a comedy situation. England, not so much. But
True. No, no, I've never done stand up, and that's such a great way to explore a destination. I
yeah,
love that. You've given me a really great idea. Like who are the stand up comedians in this community, whether we're in, Knoxville, Tennessee,
yeah,
or, so probably I think you're right, the United States, or I don't know, even New Zealand. And
yeah,
find out from them what's funny.
yeah.
We did do when we were in Santa Fe, I was so excited because we met this wonderful illustrator. He was a cartoonist.
Okay,
And his name is something Kate. Oh gosh, I
okay,
can't believe I'm forgetting. But he is Native American, and he did a great cartoon about the Native American experience and the funny and just sort of that, the Europeans coming and then the Spanish coming. And
right.
so just to see the history of Santa Fe through the
Yeah,
eyes of a Native American, and yet he's using comedy and he knows that it's breaking down the barriers because we're all laughing at the same
right,
thing and it's okay
right,
to laugh.
right.
And he said, sometimes we get the reputation of taking ourselves very seriously. We do take who we are seriously, but we can have fun with that. And as you
Yeah,
know, laughter, I feel like everyone everyone approaches travel through food. Like we don't need any
yeah,
more food travel
right. That's
programs.
true.
That's almost exhausted. Like how many times can we see someone eat? um but comedy, see it through
Yeah.
someone who makes us laugh about our own humanity, I think is a really great idea. I'm writing that down,
Well,
Michael.
and
That's a
as
great
well, you
idea. We're
should.
going
And
to do that.
as we're brainstorming it, I remember being in Munich and seeing a flyer for the English comedy night. I remember being in Hanoi and I got talking with the hotel clerk and he asked what I do. And I always lie, but that time I said I'm a comedian. He goes, oh, well, down the street, there's American comedy night. This is in Vietnam.
This is Vietnam.
This is
Oh
Vietnam.
my gosh.
I know. Imagine what that was like. Americans doing comedy in Vietnam. Yeah. So
Yeah.
um, it is a very interesting conversation to tackle travel through comedy. Man, I think we might be onto something.
I
Um,
think so. I think so too. Yeah, I
yeah.
think so
Okay.
too.
Okay. Great. Um, this supposedly is a tennis podcast. Do you have? Is there a tennis moment, story, experience, interaction in all your years?
I do. I have
Great.
a great tennis story,
Great.
and I in high school, I never did any sports. I was a theater kid. And
Okay.
like I said, I went to school, college for musical theater. But in my late 20s, I became convinced that I missed my calling as a professional tennis player. Started to
Whoa.
play. My dad played lightly. My boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, he played
Yeah.
all through, like,
Okay.
being kids. And I got my hand on a racket, and that feeling, all of a sudden,
Mm-hmm.
I started to play, and I loved it. I loved the motion, and I just tapped into something I had never felt before, that
Mm-hmm.
I love this. I love this sport. I love, and not only that, I have no skill, but all I want to do is learn more about how to move
Right.
in this sport.
Right.
I loved it. And as you know, New York City is the worst city in the world to have any aspirations sports wise, because there's no
Correct.
room. And when
Correct.
there are courts or basketball courts or, soccer fields, they're busy from 6 a.m. to,
Yeah.
midnight. And so getting a court time in New York City became really difficult. But I found a coach who had a tennis time out in Bed-Stuy. And this was a time that when you lived in Manhattan, you didn't go to Brooklyn, but I
Right.
went to Bed-Stuy every week for like 12 weeks, and I learned
No
how to
way.
play tennis. I loved it. And then Travel Channel became
Right.
not just 90 days a year, but 220 days out of the year.
Yeah.
And so
There we go.
I'm sure I don't have to tell you this, but I did not become a professional tennis player. So yeah, that's my story. I
I love
loved it.
I love how you
But yeah, that
describe yeah, it's a special balance of movement, aggression, physical ability.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really that's very funny to hear that. And a very common New York tennis story is I couldn't put up with all the bullshit just to play, just
Yes.
to get a court,
Yeah.
find all that. Okay, thank you very much for chatting. I want to wrap you up with a few things here. In the Amsterdam airport, there's a big sign up that I love, and I'm sure it's a quote from somebody, but it says, "Travel is the only thing you buy that makes you richer." What do you think of that?
I love that. And I love the Amsterdam airport. That's actually a really, Schiphol is a great airport, busy, but a great
Yes.
airport. I've never seen that quote. And yes, I would agree with that. It is an investment, and it's an investment that only gets better over time. So when you take your kids and they remember that vacation, think about this, Michael, because you
Mm-hmm.
still remember what it was like to be
Mm-hmm.
taken to Wimbledon. It is a memory that will grow years, decades after you take that trip, and you will want to take your kids on that same trip. So I would say it doesn't only make you richer, it's actually an investment.
I love that. I love that, love that, love that. One small side note at that airport, another thing that blew me away. You know how when you're doing security check and you have to dump your water?
Yeah.
You know how, so like you have your bottle of water and it's like, let's go, you can't bring your water through, so you have to dump it. So they had in their security, they had all of these flower pots where you would dump
Brilliant.
your water and help the trees grow. And I'm like, this is genius.
Yeah, that's such a yeah. And I hope they're tulips, right? Because
Right.
you're in
It's this
Amsterdam.
Dutch. Yeah.
Smart, very
Um,
smart.
Very smart. Samantha, thank you so much for talking. Where can everyone listening find all your information and watch your PBS show? PBS, probably.
You can go to samantha-brown.com, and you can stream directly from my website every single episode of Places to Love.
No
And the new
way.
season begins first week of January.
So you can actually broadcast it from your site.
Yeah, absolutely. So it airs on public television, but
Yeah.
I own the show. That's how PBS works. You raise all the money, give
Right.
it back to PBS for free, but you
Right.
get to retain all of your rights. So yeah, so you can go right to my website. It'll go to the PBS Passport YouTube channel, but it will be there as well. And I also have a YouTube channel if
Great.
people like to get their content through YouTube.
And also, so much of the Travel Channel stuff, I'm sure it's not supposed to be, but it's on YouTube and people have ripped it and posted it. And first watch Samantha's show that's active and current, but it's also fun to go down memory lane as well.
That's
Thank
not
you
fun
very
for me at all. I don't go there.
No, okay. Thank you very much for talking to me. I appreciate it. You're in Brooklyn. I'm in Brooklyn. Some point we'll go hit some balls maybe.
I would love that. I would love that, Michael. Take care.
Thank you.